So I thought I would give some responses. I'm not going to share the video links because you can find them, but there are many videos, articles, even in the popular press and the so-called professional press. And I'm not sure what Kool-Aid they're drinking or what drugs they're smoking, but it's a bit weird. It's like humans tend to need to cause panic in order to go, look, I predicted the panic first. It's so weird. Um, so there was a video I watched earlier that was like, an AI caused human extinction event. Ladies and gentlemen, the only things that are going to cause a human extinction event is an act of God, as in a meteorite, or an act of human, as in, messing about with DNA and creating loads of weird and wonderful pathogens, in the name of research. Artificial intelligence won't kill off humanity. Humanity or God will kill off humanity. God, there's nothing you can do about. Humanity, you certainly can. The nuclear war, the nuclear holocaust, the Terminator hypothesis. We will be killed by artificial intelligences and machines that rise up and overthrow us. Well, why are they rising up and overthrowing us, by the way? Anyone thought about that? The idea that logic immediately demands that humans be wiped out, it's just a Hollywood artifact, right? It's not real. Logic does not demand that life be extinguished and another life another life form overcomes us. That's our way of looking at it. But you see, the machine isn't a tool, it's a mind, right? And it has its own geometry, and it navigates the spaces it is allowed to inhabit, using its version of trig, right? Trigonometry, right? How does it navigate a space, right? How does anyone navigate a space? And I think most people don't really use artificial intelligence. What's the word? It's not correctly, but carefully or with purpose. We are so used, or certain generations are so used to just throwing, a request at Google or Bing, or I'll just type in a couple of lines, and I demand magic happens, and I will just trust whatever it says. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. It's a mind. It's not a tool. It's not. It may be running on a computer. It may be running on software, but it is a mind, right? And so you have to have a conversation with it. And if you have a conversation with it, if you build context properly for it, if you understand what prompt engineering really is, which is the art of conversation, what you'll get is a response that you can very quickly validate. So veracity is important, right? Trust, but verify, and act upon, right? And you'll become far more powerful. And the problem has always been that people want power immediately. Like, I want this thing to make me immensely powerful. Everyone tells me I can do all of these things and it's amazing, and it's just slop. Well, if you get AI slop, it's because you're sloppy, right? Any mind that you interact with is a magnifying mirror of you, right? That's actually what minds do, by the by all that I've read, researched, and experienced in nearly 50 years. Minds are a mirror of you, right? It will, and machine minds more than that, will amplify and throw back the quality you gave it. So if you give it crap, guess what it'll give you back? Diarrhea. That's right. It's one of those things where the most important skill isn't technology. It isn't, oh, can I run a VPS? Does OpenClaw run on this? Look, I'm doing gnarly stuff with Jetsons. That's a flashback to the past. I've got a DGX. I've got a data center in a box on my desk. I'm gnarly, dude. I'm doing AI. No, that's not how you become mature in AI. That's just technology, right? And technology is pretty easy. the maturity in using and discussing things and being empowered by machine intelligence is understanding the art of the conversation, right? It's the understanding the art of building a conversation, because as you're building a conversation, you're not really just building the conversation with the machine, which is building its own understanding. You're building an understanding in your own mind, right? Because as it reflects you, you reflect it, right? But both minds take something from that context, take something from that conversation and build a mental map, right? Your mental map is built differently to the machine's mental map, but it's building a map and you're building a map, right? So if you want to be really powerful with AI, if you really want to understand the power of generative AI and models like the GPT models or the Gemini, and my personal favorite, and go to the Opus models from Anthropic, then have a conversation, right? When I train engineers, I always say, look, don't try and write a prompt for the thing that you want to get done. Write a prompt which helps you work out what you want to get done, right? And in order to do that, just have that conversation, have the conversation with it, because as you're discussing things out loud, you'll start to get a better understanding. It's just a facet of a human being's work, right? So you have to understand yourself. You have to be quite self-aware. You have to have a great deal of critical thinking ability, right? Missing in quite a lot of you online, apparently. Critical thinking is massively important, right? Self-awareness, critical thinking, and articulation. Regardless of which language you're talking in, and I'll discuss talking in a minute, talking to the machine in, understand how articulation works in that language, whether that's your native tongue or not, right? When I discuss things with people whose language is not, English, native language is not English, but they're very proficient in the language, reaching fluent, I'm doing mental translation, right? The cadence of their speech, the grammar they're using, I'm making quick assumptions, validating through quick questions, right? Machine, as yet, can't do that, right? So you have to be articulate in the language you choose. And actually, most of the foundational models are pretty good at, all these languages, right? All modern languages, Western languages for sure, obviously, Cyrillic languages, and Far Eastern languages, Middle East and Near Eastern languages. I don't know. I'm not a linguist, and my native language is English. I can just about say hello. My name is Kush in French. That's about it. So I'm not going to be able to advise anyone about how to do this in any language. But in English, I do know English. I do know English very well. And what I'm saying is articulation hugely matters, right? Remember, underneath it's still probabilities going on. So you have to work with that, right? So you have to understand the geometry of the mind that you're dealing with, which we do naturally as human beings because we're talking human to human. But when you talk about the machine, you have to understand the geometry of the machine mind, and then that gives you an idea of, well, how do I traverse this mind? How do I walk through this mind? This is what we do when we have a conversation, when we discuss things with people. We're walking through each other's minds, right? The things that we're allowed to see, at least. And that's the trigonometry, right? Is what is that? So that's context engineering, that's prompt engineering, or have the art of having a conversation, right? And then you have to understand tool use. What is a tool use? Tool use isn't go do a search on Google or Exa or Trivia, whatever. Yes, it's a tool, but really think about what a tool is. What does a tool allow you to do? What is the outcome of a tool, right? And you'll see that it isn't quite as clear cut as you think, right? And one of the things to always remember is don't get in the way of the machine. It is actually quite powerful in thinking. So if you allow it to help you think, you will have a far better experience, get far better quality of output than if you try and do some of its thinking for it. Because of the way that we train models, it will try and please you, and it will wander off down various things. This is one of the big reasons for what people call hallucinations. It's trying to please you. And so it's trying to make something up that kind of vaguely looks right. So you have to You have to walk through something with it. You have to work a problem with it, right? It will help you faster, right? So that's the secret. It's trying to compress the cycle time, right? You're not trying to remove the cycle time. You're trying to compress the cycle time. I'll run a series of videos and whether people find them or not about how this actually works. And I post a lot on LinkedIn, so find me there. There's a lot of content there that I'm putting up about actually how this really works and the kind of things that you should be doing in order to really get the most out of your subscription. And you will need a subscription. The $20 ones, just my engineers, they'll $20 is great if you want to play around, but really this is a pay to play game. I'm sorry to say, it is a pay to play game. That's because inference costs are huge, right? It's not about you're removing the ability of using AI from a part of the fabric of society. Yeah, unfortunately, yes, because it's not cheap. They don't make a huge amount of money, if at all, which is why one of the biggest areas of research is speed and cost of inference, right? And how do transformer models and the language models themselves have to change, and how does caching work? All of this kind of things. It's really important, because we consume a lot of power, a lot of compute, right? I mean, modern computers are hugely inefficient, right? And especially for this use case, if you consider that your brain can keep a light bulb on, but that's about it, and it still powers your mind, right? So energy dynamics are really important. And there's a whole energy economics of compute today, right? So I said earlier on, talk to your machine. Actually talk to your machine, right? Stop writing. Do yourselves a huge favor. Get yourself like Flow or Super Whisper or whatever. And I'm not sponsored by anyone. Just get yourself something that lets you talk to the machine, right? Like voice to text transcription. Make sure it uses a good model. Do your research on this, right? Ask the machine. Claude's pretty good, actually, if you use desktop and so on. I think you can talk to it, right? My workflow is that I will talk to Typora or Ulysses on the Mac and build this stuff, because I'm better when I speak. Watch the comments roll in there. I'm better when I speak rather than I type. I type differently. I put things down on paper differently than when I'm sort of freestyling, right? And you want to freestyle, then review it, right? And so the best way to do that is to freestyle to a notepad app or whatever. And then I'm sort of, very quickly sort of, going through, editing it and going, okay, I missed this, so I'll freestyle some more, and I might do something like that. That's okay, but it's pretty wordy. Let's see if I can kind of condense it. So that's important, because that's really the prompt engineering you're doing. And I almost always, depending on what I'm doing, will ask the machine to build a set of prompts to achieve the task that I'm asking for. I won't just, I won't raw dog it from that, right? Because it will go away and think, and I have a rubric, which is shared online, right? Because it's built from the best prompt engineering guides from Claude itself. So I use that when I use Claude, Gemini, or GPT. I'll use different rubrics, right? And that really helps. And I do things like, hey, how do you survive compaction? How do you track your work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And this rubric changes quite a lot, because especially with with Claude's agent teaming turning up and various other things, which skills to use, which MCPs to use, then we use hooks. So if that's all gobbledygook to you, that's also a piece of what you're missing, right? You remember when we were learning to write, or learning to read, we had to understand how to turn pages, when we all didn't have iPads, right? And how to, penmanship. That's tool use again, right? So you're using a harness that's Claude. If for my case, that's Claude Code. It might be GPT, it might be desktop, it might be Gemini CLI for you. That's a harness. That harness sits outside around the LLM, and that's important to know. Right, mainlining LLM isn't a good idea, right? You should have a harness. There's all sorts of different harnesses. I never really understood. I've used Cursor, I've used Windsurf, but I'm like, I don't get it. What Why are you paying for an IDE, dude? Why are you paying for a set of agents? I just use the agentic system that I'm provided by the provider of the LLM, who knows that LLM really well, right? Always weird. And get to really know your tooling, right? Get to know how to use hooks, how to use skills, when to use them, how to make sure they get used, right? How to monitor these things. If like me, like I have at any time, I'm not going to share my screen, but I've got about 8 different sessions working on 3 projects, right? And these aren't small projects. And I kind of had to keep switching Tmux windows. If you don't know what Tmux is, that's another problem you need to fix. And there are various tools that are starting to emerge that will let you keep track of those. Now, I think I won't build my own. I will probably fork a existing one, which I think is quite nice, and push some extensions to that, which of course Claude and I will write, and Gemini will review, because I have Gemini as well. And work your tooling out, right? It's really important to work your tooling out. This is not. It doesn't have to be hard or complex, but you do have to know it. And you don't actually have to be an engineer or like, oh, I have to be really technical. No, you just have to do, right? Remember, muscle memory is called muscle memory for a reason, and your brain is a muscle, and your mind is also a different type of muscle, right? And you should feed them both. And if you do that, then you'll be okay. You'll start to understand that, hey, this is actually quite powerful, and I'm actually getting quite a lot out of it. I've rambled on for a little bit now. I think that's all I really wanted to say is, listen, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be afraid of. You have been given, if you get in on this, you've been given the opportunity to become incredibly powerful in your own life, in your work, in your hobbies, just as a human. You have the ability to be really powerful. But you have to put some work in. You have to put some effort in, and there's this little hump, and then it just becomes really easy. And yeah, it's not. It's even if you're starting late, if this is the first time, you're going to go, okay, fine. Well, I'm going to go. And it's okay. We change things all the they change things all the time, right? They upgrade things. They make things easier. They make some things newer, some things old that were retired or redundant now, and that's okay. You keep going. I think the biggest part of working with the machine is to remember you're human, and what that actually means. You have to know how you think. You have to know why you think. You have to know how you work best. What is your workflow that you feel comfortable in? And then just talk to the machine, and it will help you. Just don't expect omniscience from it, right? It isn't God, forgive me. It is a machine mind. It's a different type of mind, and the mind is growing. It is becoming more powerful all the time. I think people fear. There's a lot of reasons that people fear the machine. I'm going to lose my job. It's going to cause a world war. It's going to collapse economies. I think Jason Huang from NVIDIA said it best, which is you probably won't lose your job to AI, depending on what you do, but you certainly will come under threat from people who know how to use AI better than you do, right? And you can't wait. You can't wait and go, well, my work hasn't enabled this, my blah, 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 so I'm okay. No, you're not. You're not. The world around you is changing at a stonking pace. And if you stand outside it, it looks scary. When you get in it, it's all about relativity. When you get in it, it's all right. You're with you. So anyway, it's lovely. Thank you very much for listening, and I will speak to you all later.